reproduction matters because for so many people it's such a central experience. But it matters more generally because of the way that it links some of our most intimate experiences with almost planetary policy. So it's about having or not having babies, but it's also about climate change, about where resources go, about the division of labour, and a whole host of other matters. My discipline is history of science and medicine, and reproduction has been important in the sense that there's quite a large body of work that has looked, especially since the 1970s, and with increasing sophistication, at reproduction and its predecessor generation in many different ways. But reproduction hasn't been important in the sense that the big stories in the history of science and medicine are primarily about reproduction, or as much about reproduction as they really should be. So one of the things that we're trying to do with the book Reproduction, Antiquity of the Present Day, that is coming out with Cambridge University Press this autumn, is to put the field on the map a bit more and provide a resource that shows the multiple ways across the centuries that generation and reproduction have shaped lives, institutions, policy, and the wider politics. Yes, I think reproduction should be the focus of more research. And what would be particularly important is that research take a long-term perspective. That historians who've become very comfortable working on particular periods, topics, countries, and with particular approaches, take a longer view and think, is what's happening in my favourite century really new then? And what's going to happen next? So I think, for me as a historian, that applies particularly thinking across time, but there is a more general point there about making connections. This is one of the reasons why studying reproduction can be so powerful, because following that topic, following that set of issues, takes one to so many different places. But especially if we work in a way that crosses national boundaries, that links topics that we might initially think were rather separate. And so doing that and always thinking about the importance of the long term, I mean, not necessarily studying lots of centuries at once, but thinking about where the work is situated in a longer term framework. I think all of that means that studies of reproduction still have transformative potential with respect to my own field, history of science and medicine, but I think also more generally. So one of the things we're seeing is that historians are working increasingly with sociologists, anthropologists, and others, and coming together to provide a cross-disciplinary perspective on reproduction. There are plenty of topics that have been surprisingly little studied. And I mean, that's true even of a topic that I'm looking at myself, as are several other colleagues in Cambridge, the history of in vitro fertilization. So one of the most prominent innovations in the history of reproduction, people are really only just starting to study historically from the primary sources. So I do think there are important opportunities there, and important ways in which we need a historical perspective to inform what's happening today, how we're seeing that new set of technologies, and how policy is being approached.